Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We are, of course, your multi-award winning Tottenham Hotspur podcast. Tottenham Hotspur, they love a Friday. Rodrigo Bentancur's put pen to paper on new contract. Thomas Frank has finally announced his leadership group. And will Tottenham also finally put to an end the international break curse? 6 defeats in a row. That's got to come to an end this weekend when we take on a Leeds United side. We've got a good record on. Anthony Cosano shouting at me saying, shut up, Rick. We've only just begun. Back on the show, alongside me, I've got the wonderful Jonathan Hamme back in the house. Football Link's very, very own. Johnny H3232 on the Insta and talking Tottenham 1882. We're joined by the wonderful bronzed up Mitch Fretton. Is back in the house. He's ready for what comes for Spurs after the international break. And also returning, listen, Ireland's lovable friend and certainly ours over here. We've got the wonderful David Harris over from the Irish Hotspur back on the show as we steer you through to what is a big, big weekend for Tottenham back in the Premier League. And in terms of what we're going to be giving you during this show, a bit of a roundup in terms of this week as Spurs fans. As we mentioned, Rodrigo Bentancur putting pen to paper on a brand new contract. That is a done deal. We've also got, like we said, the announcement of the leadership group that has been confirmed by Thomas Frank. He's been pressed and pressed for weeks. We've got confirmation who's in and who is, interestingly, not in. We'll be coming on to that and more during this show. It's already started. Transfer window rumours have begun. Jason McGovern, cover your ears, shut those eyes. Semenyo reportedly back on Spurs' radar. As also is reportedly one that I think this would take a lot of fans by surprise. With the light of it happened, Valverde at Real Madrid. Keep an eye on him, despite a defiant statement that he's released in these last couple of days. And also one to also keep an eye on is the striker Pellegrino. We'll be coming on to him and more as Spurs are ready to dip back into the market reportedly and try and strengthen their squad for what will be the second half of the season. I know what you're thinking. We're not even finished the first half of the season yet, but this is our Tottenham move. Listen, delighted to have these wonderful gentlemen back alongside me. Guys, we're going to dip straight in if we can. Keep liking and subscribing out there to these wonderful gentlemen across their platforms. Of course, Mitch, you can catch him, of course, on YouTube, TikTok. Dave, of course, at the Irish Hotspur. And Johnny, of course, over at Football Link, Spurs 5, Instagram. You know it. He's there. He's around. John, let's jump straight in if we can. We know how big this weekend is for Tottenham. Can we finally, before we come on to Rodrigo's new contract, end this international break curse?
I remember it well, October the 7th, 2023, up at Luton. I was there that day when Bissouma must have had one of his balloons and got sent off. And we managed to grind out a 1-0 victory. I think it was Mickey van der Ven with the goal, I think. We ground out that result that day, and it was a great victory. It seems like a lifetime ago, though. And it is hard to believe that it's 2 years ago, almost to the day, since we won before an international break. We have to stop this now. It's just becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. Time for it to stop. We have a very good record at Leeds, just the same as we had a very poor record against Wolves. So I'm hopeful. Well, I've got to be hopeful. I'm getting in the car for the 3.5-hour drive there and the 3.5-hour drive back tomorrow. So I'm praying for me, and I'm praying for all the Spurs fans out there that we get the win that would elevate us and send us away in the international break with a smile on our face for the first time in 2 years.
Yep, absolutely. One man that looks like he's back and ready for what's going to be thrown at us is Mitch. Bronzed up for those that are on audio. He looks like he's had a really good, refreshing break and is ready for life back under Thomas Frank. Mitch, what do you put this whole crazy international break curse down to? Is it the fact players are preoccupied with going away to their respective countries? What is it, this enigma with regards to Spurs and international breaks and simply not getting the required result before they take place? And we'll get you some mute if you can, Mitch.
Yeah, I think you've sort of mentioned a part of it. I think a lot of people have maybe pointed to the fact that players aren't willing to put themselves 100% on the line before international breaks. I know there's always a lot of talk around, especially our South American contingent. Obviously, we know how much they all love to play for their country. Cuti Romero, in particular, has always been the one that's sort of been name dropped there. Obviously, Bentancur as well. Richarlison loves playing for Brazil when he's selected. I don't know. There's just I feel like it's one of those things, you know how we've always been, we always get labels attached to us, and there's always these sort of elements to our game that just seemingly carry over. You know, it's always, never going to win trophies, always going to bottle it, all of that sort of stuff. And it kind of feels like the not winning before an international break is starting to fall into that category, which is really frustrating. Last time that we did that was against Luton, who have been relegated twice since then, down into League One. So it kind of says it all. But weirdly, the fact that it's such a tough away trip, the fact we've got quite a good record against Leeds, the fact that we the players will be aware of this whole situation and not being able to win before the international break, obviously, and maybe coupled with the fact that the performances haven't been entirely great over the last couple of weeks. I think I'm actually feeling a bit more confident than I usually would going into a game before an international break, that we can get something out of it. But of course, it's never a given, really, is it? And Saturday, early kickoff, Leeds, who have started the season quite well, obviously one of the promoted teams. I don't know. It's just such a tricky one to sort of gauge how we're going to do in, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, Mitch. I totally agree with you there. Dave, welcome back. Love to have you back on. I think last time you was here with us, it was flying high to Thomas Frank. What could go wrong? Obviously, since you last was with us, I think we had to defeat the Bournemouth in there, and there's been a little bit of concern over some of the recent displays from an attacking perspective. Look, we've come back in the last 3 games and got an element of points in there as well. How crucial is it, Dave, for you that we do get back to winning ways this weekend? And in turn, that would it mean we do end this, like we've said, curse around international breaks, Dave? What do you put it down to? And we'll get you to unmute from your end. Love to be back alongside us, mate.
It's absolutely a pleasure to be back. Sorry to those who've been waiting to hear from me maybe before now. I do apologise.
I've had a lot of complaints from Ireland, Dave. I've kept them all on the radar. I've kept them all calm. Now you're back. They're all happy again now.
Yeah, I've heard they've been emailing in. Good evening, gentlemen, and good evening, panel. How are you all? Look, this is a curse that has to be broken. I don't think it's something that Thomas Frank can break per se. It's not a tactical issue. It's not, it's more of a mentality issue. And for me, that's something that can only really be fixed by their leaders in the dressing room. Those who really have a passion to win and try and, compete, you don't let up. You're relentless. You get your job done and then you go and focus. Whereas at Tottenham, it seems to be that it's a bit more of a, we let up, come up towards international break, that final weekend, a bit like, breaking up for the school summer holidays. That's the sort of vibe it feels like. And it is a big concern, but that's only something that the leaders in the dressing room can really get a hold of and sort of stamp that culture in and around the training ground, in the build-up on the week into that game, that, get your focus on this game and not the people that you're going to see, maybe the family or, meeting up with your friends and stuff like that and heading away on international duty. But I really think, breaking that curse is really actually important heading into this October international break, because I think this is the period where a lot of fans sort of decide whether we're still in a position to be able to go and compete in all 4 fronts, or whether, the warning signs are there. And, because in around this period in years gone by, it has been after this period, under previous regimes, different managers, where we sort of tail off, and it's a really important one for me in terms of Thomas Frank, because right now we're in a bit of a sticky situation where you look at the stats and you can argue they look good, but then you can also argue that there's maybe signs that maybe the early season form is starting to tail off. You look at the last 4 games, 1 win in the last 4 games, and that has come against League One opposition. Performances haven't been great. Going forward, which was a major issue last season, Thomas Frank hasn't really been able to rectify, but he's also not putting Simmons and Kudus out there consistently, players that we bought in to try and rectify that problem. So I think, if we don't win this, all of a sudden fans are heading in talking about, how crap we are going forward, the sort of bad performances and stuff like that. And then I think it looks very different for Thomas Frank. I think a bit of pressure then starts emerging on him. So for me, I think it's very important right now where we are that we win, alleviate a lot of fans' concerns and actually just get the hype, back around the club heading into the next period. Because right now, I'd argue we've probably had a very easy start, to our Premier League campaign, our Carabao Cup campaign and our Champions League campaign in terms of fixtures. You look at a lot of the other clubs, that we're expected to compete with Premier League-wise, Man City, Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal, they've all played each other. Even in Champions League, they've had, bigger games than us, harder games than us. So, for me, I felt like this is a period where we really needed to stack up the points. And I've been disappointed in recent weeks because when you look at the fixture schedule after October, it's relentless. We've got all the bigger teams coming, and we had a period like that under Ange Postecoglou, and we didn't go into it in winning ways in games that we should have, and the wheels completely fell off, and it was a long, dark period for Tottenham fans. We were begging for the season to end because we didn't know where we were going to come out of it. So I think this game is very, very important in terms of the mood around the place, that we get the win and head into the international break in a good place.
Dave, thank you so much for that point. I'm just going to update everybody out there because we've had some late news that's coming on this edition of Last Word on Spurs. It does come in relation to potential ownership news. So we'll bring that to you right now. The Asia-based consortium of investors led by Firehawk Holdings Limited have confirmed through the London Stock Exchange that it is not intending to make an offer for Tottenham Hotspur. PCP International Finance Limited did the same soon after the initial interest. So where we are right now on this, it is just left now down to and waiting to see whether Brooklyn Eric's US consortium will announce whether they will or won't make an offer for Spurs before the end of play on October 24th. So, John, just very quickly on that news, any real surprise for you on that? The news now that we're hearing that Firehawk Holdings Limited have confirmed that they are not intending to make an offer. They follow PCP International Finance Limited by doing the same. And now we await to find out if Brooklyn Eric's US consortium are going to follow suit.
No shock there at all. Just we need to find out now whether there's a DJ in the house, and he's going to play a few tunes. For me, the big news about all of this is that Spurs. The one aspect I've maintained throughout all of these talks, and they're maintaining that they had no interest in selling, was the fact that they were still with Rothschilds. And the fact that they have now announced their departure from Rothschilds after 2 years since Levy appointed them, looking for inward investment, suggests that they are in fact not looking to sell now. Because that for me was the red herring. That's been removed, but I'd like to know where the money's coming from, because they needed the money then. No money's coming in. It's coming. They've got 100 million payday loan, so the money's going to have to come from somewhere. So I expect further news to come very, very soon, because we're going to need to spend some money and spend it big come January, if you can find someone to come.
Okay, well, we're going to come on to some of those January rumours, but let's start with what's been the big news heading into the weekend. That is that Rodrigo Bentancur has put pen to paper on a new contract with the football club, and he said for him, he's setting his sights on winning more trophies with Tottenham after signing that new long-term contract. Now, he entered that final 12 months of his previous deal, but Spurs made renewing the Uruguayan contract a top priority. Bentancur has made 122 appearances to date for Spurs since joining from Juve 3 years ago, and obviously played a crucial role in the club's Europa League campaign success of last season. Bentancur admitted after signing the new deal, "I feel really good. I'm very happy to continue my story with this fantastic club. My family are happy. I have fantastic friends and teammates who work hard every day. I love this club and feel really good here. Winning the Europa League was a fantastic moment, and we want to build on this now to win more trophies. We have a new head coach, a new captain, and I want to enjoy many, many more years at this football club." Mitch, I'll come to you on this point. It's been interesting with Rodrigo because it feels that after a decent start to the season, very much like what Spurs and what Dave touched upon there, he's also struggled for form. Do you think this contract could hopefully spur him on, pardon the pun there, into better form in the Tottenham shirt, Mitch? And are you in favour of the fact we've given him that extension?
Yeah, I'm quite happy that he signed an extension, to be honest with you. I feel like the fan base is actually quite split on this news. I don't know if that's maybe down to recency bias due to the fact that the last couple of weeks he hasn't been particularly great. But we know that this Bentancur contract's been in the works for months and months and months, and they've been trying to get it over the line. So it's not based on any recent form, or I doubt even his performances under Thomas Frank. But look, Rodrigo Bentancur is a core part of our squad. And whether your opinion is that he should be a starter for Tottenham Hotspur or he should be maybe more of a squad player, he has a lot of quality about his game. And I think we all know when he's on his game, he's a very, very good player. He excels in a lot of different areas that I really, really like in a midfielder, particularly his ability to have the ball close at his feet and turn away from danger and sort of get out of high pressure moments in the middle of the park. And yes, I'll happily admit that he's not really done enough for me so far this season. So I can kind of see the slight frustration from a lot of Tottenham fans about maybe him signing that new deal and the timing of it. But I don't want to use the ACL excuse because obviously that was a long time ago now, but I do feel like it is still fair to maybe suggest that there are going to be periods in his game where he's not going to be as consistent, and we can only hope that he does turn that round. And as the season goes on, he's only going to improve. I think my frustration more is him being played with Paulinho on a constant basis when that's not necessarily needed. I think Bentancur as an individual player, he can add a lot to this Tottenham squad. But for me, I'm happy to see him extend and stay for a little bit longer. And it's not even worst thing in the world if he does maybe fall out of the starting 11 and become more of a bench rotation player, because then he signed a contract extension and he's got more sell-on value in the future anyway, because I still think he is that level of player. Whereas if we did decide to move him on next summer, say, then I think there are a lot of teams that would take him. So yeah, I got no problems at all really with him signing that extension, and he seems very happy about it as well.
Yeah, it's interesting, Mitch. You brought up an interesting point there that I think I agree with you. I've seen a real split in regards to the Spurs community about this contract extension. I'll bring Dave in if I can, but Thomas Frank has said on Bentancur signing a new deal, I'm extremely happy that Rodrigo has committed his future to the club. It's fantastic news that the club have managed to extend, firstly, Romero's contract, but also now Rodri's. I think it's a big sign that both of them believe in the project and the future here. And hopefully, this is the fantastic journey we are going to be on all together. I think it's a big, big signal. It will be the easiest thing in the world for Rodri to run his contract down and look to go elsewhere. So I think it's a signal of brilliance, the fact that he wants to have a big part of his future at Tottenham. I'm extremely happy that we managed to sign him down. I think he's a top player for Tottenham, and I also think we can get more out of him, and that's even at a higher level. It shows his belief in what we're building here, and we are starting again, as I've mentioned, a great journey, and Rodri is a really special part of that. He's a fantastic midfielder who can dictate games and be the glue that holds the team together. He has a great ability to arrive in the penalty area, create and score goals, which is crucial to why we wanted to keep him here. Dave, I'll bring you in. What's your initial reaction to Bentancur putting pen to paper?
Yeah, first of all, I'm very happy. I think it's a good indictment for Thomas Frank that he's managed to get Romero and Rodrigo Bentancur to be able to commit to new deals. I think it's something that, Postecoglou let himself down, not trying to get Harry Kane to commit to a new deal. He was almost like, oh, we'll deal with it. Whereas Thomas Frank have sort of come in and showed them the love and shown that you are integral to what I'm trying to do. And for me, I am one that is a Bentancur fan. I sort of acknowledge what he does do. I think where I disagree with Mitch is I know a lot of fans are sort of unhappy with him sort of being paired up with João Paulinho, which I can understand. Maybe it's not as progressive as many people would like. But for me, I think Thomas Frank actually needs to go back to that pairing. When we had that pairing before he started chopping and changing it, we were winning games. And for me, that's the pairing that he needs to go back to. Paulinho does exactly what, he says on the tin. He goes and combats, he wins you balls and stuff like that. I think where the big frustration actually comes in with Rodrigo Bentancur is that when he does, I agree with Mitch that in tight spaces, he's got a wonderful touch, the ability to turn away from trouble, something that Luka Modric possessed at Tottenham Hotspur. I think that's a great trait to have. And I think, where the problem comes in is that fans feel like once he does that, his passes are maybe too safe. He recycles possession rather than sort of progressing the ball. However, I'd make the argument, I think every great team has a player in that midfield deeper that can sort of just get on the ball and recycle possession. It helps you sort of control a game. It helps you sort of try and keep the opposition pinned back. But I think where Thomas Frank sort of said about him arriving late in the box, scoring goals, if we're being brutally honest, we haven't really seen that until, since the Antonio Conte days before his sort of injury and his suspension and stuff like that. Since he's come back, he has been more happy to sort of sit in that deeper role and maybe not get forward as much. I think the area where he maybe needs to develop his game, in terms of maybe keeping fans happy, and for me, I think for him to be able to maybe take his game to the next level, is actually just expand his passing range. Start playing progressive forwards, into the lines, into your cams, into your wingers, start putting balls over the top, you know. And I think for me, that's the area where he really needs to take, you know, in order to get himself to the next level. And I also think it'll get a lot of fans off his back. I think right now they're looking at him and goes, yeah, he recycles possession, but does he really affect the game of football? But I would also argue, I think the frustration of the forward line not doing their jobs, not being as creative, I think many fans are then looking back at the pitch, you know, looking at Bentancur to start being that guy, to start creating and stuff like that, you know, and sort of take, you know, because the front line isn't as creative as we all expected or as we all want. So I think now you're starting to see frustrations maybe being put on the personnel further back in the pitch who have been brought in, and mainly their jobs is to give us that solid foundation to be able to give us the base to go and win games, which I'd argue they've done. So I think it's a bit of both. I think Bentancur needs to improve, but also I think the fans' frustration with the forward line is sort of now being reverted and put on him.
Mm-hmm. Interesting points there. John, just to bring you in, Frank was actually asked in his presser on Rodrigo, you said he can still improve. What areas do you think he can push on to another level? And he said, on regards to Rodrigo on that point, I think one thing we've seen is I'm very, very happy with him as a player and as a character. I think that when he plays at his best level, he's a top midfielder in the Premier League. I need to see a little bit more consistency, though, which I think was great to hear Frank say that. He said, I also want him, and I told him myself, I want to see him dictate the game more, get on the ball when it's tough, because he's such a good player with the ball. He's so composed and so good to get the ball in tight areas and get out of those situations. That's what I would like to see more of. So I think that is the first bit, and he can easily add more goals to his game. But the more we control the middle of the pitch with him, the better. Would you agree, John, that's what's maybe letting him down this season in terms of that lack of consistency that maybe we saw in those opening couple of games under Frank?
I think when he first signed in that January from Juventus, I was so excited watching him. Right, I mean, he was such a good player. The problem I had was I felt that he needed to add goals, and in that period between August and prior to the World Cup, where he got injured, he was unbelievable. He was getting goals. I did a poll, and he was clear. Voted the best player so far in the season prior to that ridiculous mid-season break for the World Cup. Obviously, that ACL and then coming back for the injury slowed him down. But for me, we should be applauding the fact that in this day and age where players often run down their contracts or go to January to try and get a pre-contract or go in the summer for a free, and line their pockets for huge sums of money. And let's be serious, right? This guy hasn't come from Burnley or from Luton, right? He's come from Juventus, okay? Yep. So, you know, he's a top player, had lots of interest. So you know, the fans cried out last season, we don't have enough experience. We need experience. Well, this guy has the experience. If you've ever seen him, you know, I can't say I'm an avid watcher of Uruguay, but I've watched a couple of the games when I've not been able to sleep. Uruguay, Brazil, whatever, and he was outstanding man of the match. He's got it in him in those big games. He worked fantastically well with Romero, picking the ball up off Romero off the back. I agree. He hasn't had the type of form in certain parts of the game that he had, he had previously. But I'm on Dave's camp. The final third phase of our team is so poor at the moment. There aren't the runs. They're not offering themselves, and I think that's hindering somewhat his game. But I think he should be scoring more goals. I think he will score more goals. He can be a box to box, and I think if you put the right players around him, he's going to be an influential player in this squad. And let's be honest, guys, it is not the first 11. It's a squad-based game these days, and you need depth. We've only got to look up at the other half of London to see the amount of injuries they've got, and it hasn't even affected them because there's strength in depth. Unfortunately for us, we can't say the same, and our attack right now is pretty weak.
Yeah. Well, look, Thomas Frank, we're going to pivot slightly, has now named his leadership group for the 25-26 season. Joining club captain Christian Romero are Ben Davies, James Maddison, Guillermo Vicario, and Mickey van der Ven. Thomas Frank said on this decision, all 5 players have the leadership qualities and, crucially, the potential to become even better leaders. They have the ability to speak up on the pitch, in the dressing room, and in meetings. However, it's not just about football. It's about people too. They are aware of their teammates, how to make the group function in a good way, and how to make the team tick both on and off the pitch. It's important to have the whole dressing room being represented in this leadership group. And Kuti, Ben, Madders, Vic, and Mickey do that. Whilst these 5 players make up the official leadership group, we have a dressing room that is full of leadership potential, and I'm looking forward to more players stepping up in matches and around the training centre. Now, again, I've seen an interesting reaction to this from the Spurs fan base, Spurs community. I know there's some feeling that why are certain players in here when they're not going to be playing regularly this season? Why will the likes of Rodrigo Bentancur, Pedro Porro not included in the group? We'll bring on Frank's quotes just shortly on this, but Mitch, we'll start with you if we can. I think, Mitch, we've got him back. Mitch, thoughts on this leadership group for you? Have we got the right type of players in this group for you? And we'll get you to unmute if you can for us, Mitch.
I think so. It's a really, really difficult one because, as you've already mentioned, like Ben Davies is going to play minimal minutes this season. Maddison's not really going to play any minutes at all unless he makes an incredibly fast comeback towards the end of the season on his knee injury. But I mean, Madders is obviously a vice captain before that last season. You know what sort of character he is, what he brings to the dressing room. And then I think it's pretty obvious thinking behind Ben Davies's inclusion, that experience, that sort of calm mentality, probably, you know, that more senior father figure type player in the dressing room. So I don't necessarily think if you're going to appoint, 5 people to your leadership group, I don't necessarily think that all of them have to play a lot of minutes. I mean, you look at every squad in the Premier League and most of them have those older sort of players in and around everyone to bring that sort of leadership, to bring that family feeling, that closeness. And that'll be the reason Ben Davies is still around at the club, despite maybe his quality not being there anymore. And while he's at the club, I don't see why he wouldn't be included in that sort of leadership group. We know how vocal Vicario is, how passionate he is about the club. So for all of our opinions on maybe his quality and some of the things that he can perhaps improve on, he's very obviously a natural leader. Thomas Frank sees these guys every day. We see them on a weekend or twice a week on the pitch and what's posted on social media. But obviously the gaffer's around them every single day at training. He knows a lot more about their personalities, how they maybe sort of bond the group together. So I don't have any issues with the leadership group because of that. I trust Thomas Frank to be able to pick the right people to be able to keep this team together. The most important thing will be when we're going through the tough periods, maybe like the period we're going through now. Obviously, we've got a very tricky run coming up at the end of October, start of November. So that'll probably be the first time this leadership group since being announced is really, really tested. And Mickey's a fan favourite, probably one of the reasons why he's in there. Everybody loves Mickey van der Ven. I very much doubt there's a person at the club that doesn't. So I'm happy. There are obviously other players that could be included. Pedro Porro captained the side, obviously against Doncaster, and he seems to be a big character. But maybe more people will get added. Maybe as time will come, some of these players in this leadership group are not going to be at the club forever. So yeah, I'm quite happy with it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's interesting, David. To bring you in on this point, you look at obviously the 5 players that have been named here. Ben Davies, like Mitch said, not going to have a lot of minutes, you'd imagine, this season. Will fill in where and if necessary, maybe due to injuries. And that's no disrespect to Ben, but obviously he's been at the club for a very, very long time, approaching nearly a decade. You've got James Maddison, that we understand is out for the majority of the season. I think it's fair to say right now, I voiced my concerns about him. I have really big concerns about whether Vicario has got a long-term future at the club due to some recent erratic performances in goal. So I'm asking you, Dave, what do you make of this choice of selection of the leadership group? Should there even be such a thing as a leadership group? Your thoughts, Dave, for you on this? Yeah,
look, I'm not a fan of this leadership group. I think maybe it highlights that there's maybe not a lot of leaders in and around football teams anymore. Maybe football is changing and sort of going in that direction, where everyone sort of has to be included, or maybe the idea behind it is, that you have so many different players in there that people can go to rather than maybe 1 or 2 players taking the responsibility. However, I'm not a fan of it. I would rather just go back to, having your captain and vice captain. I think too many voices is a problem, just like too many cooks spoil the broth. So for me, I'd rather resort to old ways. But look, when you look at the players, I sort of agree with you on Vicario. You know, you look at his last 3 games for Tottenham, 3 mistakes. You know, that form can't keep going. He keeps making mistakes. All of a sudden, you know, Thomas Frank could very quickly find himself maybe in a situation where maybe he has to drop one out of the leadership group, which I think becomes very tough. You know, maybe bringing Kinski if Vicario keeps
Can I ask you,
making
Dave, just on Vicario,
Yeah.
by the fact that he's named him in that leadership group, is that almost in a sense a vote of confidence that he does see him still being the number one long term? Do you think, Dave?
100%. It's sort of a vote in confidence and maybe just saying to Vicario, you know, despite the noise around you, you are my number one sort of moving forward. However, you know, things can change very quickly in football. It's now up to Vicario whether he decides to sort of repay Thomas Frank with a string of sort of good performances, gets back to maybe keeping a couple of clean sheets, or, you know, if he doesn't, then all of a sudden Thomas Frank is left in a very difficult position. I think he's in a difficult position anyway, naming Vicario in the leadership group, because I think we're sort of approaching a situation maybe Arsenal did with Ramsdale and David Raya. You know, many fans were confused why Arsenal ended up going for David Raya, but in hindsight, when you look at maybe the calmness he's brought across that back line, you know, to Arsenal, you know, his reliability in terms of coming out and commanding his area, you know, his distribution is quite on point. You know, these are all things where Vicario is lacking. And, you know, I think so. We are approaching a conversation maybe come the summer. If Tottenham want to sort of kick on to that next level, do you maybe have to bring in a better goalkeeper, you know, to sort of, you know, kick on? So I think we're approaching that situation. So I'm not quite sure about that one. I'm one of them. If you're not really performing on the pitch, you know, and you start flapping about, and when you do that, you make others nervous, what value are you really to a leadership group? I'm not quite so sure. I think Romero is the right choice, of course, being club captain. I think he should have been made captain, you know, when, you know, a couple of years ago when they made Son captain. I think it's the right decision. You know, this guy, I think, is the right guy to lead Tottenham moving forward. Look at, you know, the international honours that he has to his name. You know, he's after maturing as a centre-back, I'd argue, as well. And I just think, you know, he leads by performances on the pitch. And he also has that aggression, that fear factor, you know, that maybe old leaders and old captains sort of had. So I think he's a superb choice by Thomas Frank to make this guy Tottenham's captain moving forward. Also, I think Mickey van der Ven, I actually think Mickey van der Ven is in there based on his performances on the pitch and the consistency of his performances on the pitch. And I like that he's gone and got maybe one of the elder statesmen of the younger group in the Tottenham squad. And this guy is in there because he's leading by example on the football pitch. And when I look at him, I do see him maybe starting to become a little bit more vocal. And maybe he is learning off Romero, where he said, well, you know, when that famous car drive, that Romero makes me more aggressive and I make him more calm. And I think, you know, they're a very well-suited partnership. I think it's sort of the reincarnation of Toby Alderweireld and Jan Vertonghen. And I think there's very similar traits, you know, to be able to compare to them. So I think that was a very smooth decision. I'm a bit dubious on the Maddison one. I'm not sure the benefit of that. You know, that's one that he maybe could have revisited next summer and included him if that's what he wanted to do. But to add him in while he's not really available, I'm not quite so sure on that one. And with Ben Davies, even though I don't agree with it, I understand the point that he's a father figure, you know, and that he is sort of a player that with the young squad we have, there will be many that will go to him looking for advice and how to handle situations, stuff like that. So although I don't agree with it, I can understand it.
Interesting. I mean, John, to come over to you, he was asked directly in his press conference, Rodrigo Bentancur, Pedro Porro, they were not included in the leadership group. Are there any individual reasons for why you selected each player in it? And he said, I think it's down to a few bits. First and foremost, there is quite a few with leadership potential within this group. The more we can have that want to speak up and take responsibility for the bigger picture, the better. That's what creates the best teams. And I agree with Rodri and Pedro, especially, the two of them. They're two I want them to take more responsibility, and I think they'll do very well. But I also think the group also covers the squad to make sure we get around to everyone. Make sure that all groups, even though we're one big group, are touched and in sync. So there's a lot of factors to the players that I've picked. Your thoughts, Johnny, on that leadership group selected by Thomas Frank?
A bloody load of rubbish, honestly. I'm old school. Captain, vice captain. There should be leaders on the pitch. Porro is a leader. We've seen him fired up. I've seen him run up to the fans and, like, you know, try and get us fired up, right? Yeah. Same with Bentancur. You know, for me, when I suggested Romero should have been captain instead of Son a couple of years ago, you know, I got quite a bit of abuse because I think he's a leader. I think the leadership has made him calmer. But listen, I don't really understand this whole thing. I've got to be honest with you. We've got Ben Davis, who's leader of the book club. So he's leading books and reading. And we've got James Maddison on social media and videoing. Give me a break, right? I mean,
well,
listen.
If you say he's covering all bases.
Listen, look. I'm very happy. I'm very happy. Ben Davis has been loyal, but I'm with Dave. James Maddison, get back to training. There could have been other people in the leadership group. What happens when someone who's not part of the leadership group voices an opinion? Do they get shut down because they're not part of the leadership group? Because I think all the players, we want to encourage players to show leadership qualities, whether it be, Archie Gray, whether it be Bergvall. We want players to step up. I mean, let's be honest, Matthias Tell has been, shocking, but he's been the one at times when it was going wrong last season that was jumping into the crowd, pleading with them to calm down when, the fan base was going nuts. So I want to encourage everyone to be part of it. The worrying thing for me is that the fact that Vicario is in the leadership group mean he's undroppable? Because let's be honest, his position should be questioned, the way he's performing at the moment. And I don't think, I agree with Dave that Mickey van der Ven and Romero are the best centre-back partnership since Toby and Jan. And I think they're only going to get better, especially under this sort of more defensive setup. It's more tailored for them. But he has to do better because he's a worrying aspect. I mean, he's cost us points, he's cost us goals. And I can't see it stopping, if I'm brutally honest. I think there are better goalkeepers out there. As a person, I really like him. I don't particularly like when he's shouting and screaming at young kids when they make mistakes, when you've made about 2 yourself in the game. But it is what it is. I'll embrace it. I'll accept it. But I'm not a great fan of it. Captain, vice captain, thank you very much.
Okay. Well, look, boys, there's a lot to cover. Just as we're going to lead into the show and go for our first break, Thomas Frank has said on January planning and conversations with both Vinay Venkatesham and Johan Lang that I think a week or two after the window shuts, we have already started beginning that preparation for the next window. And we will have a meeting relatively soon where we will speak about targets and we will go from there. So we are going to go for our first break of the show. For our listeners that are on audio, we have got already over 4,500 of you that are watching us live across all of our platforms. So as always, thank you ever so much for all your incredible support for Last Word on Spurs. We are delighted once again out there, a little bit of admin, to be up for the Football Content Awards of 2025. You can help us bring home yet another trophy for the Spurs community, where we're in the categories of Best Podcast in Premier League and Best in Social Creators. You can vote for us for those that watch the show by hitting the QR code. And for our listeners on audio, there's a link in our episode description. We are working closely with Ben and Sim, of course, of We Are Tottenham TV. They're in the Best Club Content Creator category. So please go and give them a vote if you can. Let's share the love across the Spurs community. Guys, I'm just going to take us through a couple of different transfer stories that we've heard, and you just give us a quick rating as to whether we should be saying yay or nay, or if they're hot or cold. One of the names that has come up, which I think would be maybe for some a dream move if it does take place during a January transfer window, is that of Federico Valverde. There are reports suggesting that Tottenham have already held preliminary talks with regards to a move for the Uruguayan international. One of Rodrigo Bentancur can have a word. He's been under the spotlight recently, with his future remaining uncertain. His performances have dropped below the standard. They were expected to do so under new boss Xabi Alonso. Look, he's been a player that was viewed to being, at one point, a huge part of Madrid's future. He's praised for his ability to drive with the ball and his defensive discipline. However, under the early stages of Alonso, he's really failed to hit the ground running. But he does represent an additional player that would bring a real blend of graft with guile. He's known as a box-to-box specialist and would complement, many would say, João Pellegrino's skill and Xavi Simons' creativity, and would maybe provide that balance in the heart of the midfield that we might be missing. Now, quite interestingly, there's been a statement from Fede Valverde's camp that says, I've read and seen several damaging articles to my reputation. I know I've had some bad games and I'm aware of that. I'm not hiding. I face criticism head on, and I'm truly sad. People can say many things about me, but under no circumstances can they say that I refuse to play or don't give everything for the team. I've played while I've been fractured and had an injury. I've never complained or asked for a break. I've had a really good relationship with the coach who's made me feel confident to tell me I'm in his plans in terms of the position that I want to play. I've left my heart and soul in this club, and I will continue to do so, even if sometimes I'm not playing as I'd like to. I swear on my pride, I'll never give up, and I will fight until the end, playing wherever I'm needed. Well, he's not short of a word or two. Quick yes or no on this one, guys. We've got quite a number that we need to get through here. Johnny, let's start with you. Valverde, tell us what you think, yes or no. Anything else you want to quickly share on the player? I'm just conscious of time for us all.
Yeah. Listen, great central midfield players. Play at right back, right midfield. 27 years of age, Uruguayan, as you said. Bentancur can have a chat, but I don't think even Bentancur's chat. If we sign Valverde, right, I might have to eat my hat. He's about 120 million euros, 100 million euros the last time I saw he was valued at. And let me tell you, if we end up buying him, that is a sign of intent. And I will clap Enoch's sons and daughters, Joe Lewis' sons and daughters, if we sign this one, because that's a top signing. I can't see us ever spending over 100 million on a 27-year-old. But if we do, we're changing track, and I'd welcome it.
Okay, boys, let's go to Mitch and Dave on this one very quickly. Yes or no? Mitch, is a Madrid player, come out and said he's fighting for his future. Yes or no, Mitch? What do you reckon on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I'd need to have a word with anybody who's saying no to this. He's an incredible player. Genuinely, I really, really rate him very, very highly. He's versatile. He can do jobs in a lot of areas of the pitch. Like I said, excellent, one of the star guys for Uruguay. But as Johnny's already said, it seems slightly out of reach, probably even in a summer transfer window, let alone a January transfer window. But, you know, this change of direction and there's all of these cash injections coming from all over the place and all of this change at the top. You never know. Maybe we'll all be surprised. But yeah, like I said, I'd be surprised if Madrid were accepting any offers too far below that 100 million euro mark for someone of his quality. And the issue is when you try and pry players away from clubs like Real Madrid as well, is 9 times out of 10, they probably don't really want to leave because of the club that they're already at. So just this, I'm not trying to be too much of a pessimist, but, you know, Real Madrid to Tottenham at the moment, it's kind of a difficult one to sort of get fully on board with. But I think he would, like Johnny said, it'd be a real statement of intent, massively improve us, and yeah, it would mark a significant change in direction when it comes to transfer strategy, considering he's not 22, 23 years old either. But yeah, would be a fantastic signing.
Don't forget, Mitch, that special relationship we have with them. Don't forget that. Let's come with Dave on this. Don't forget on that point. Dave, what do you reckon on this one? Valverde to Tottenham. Should we get excited?
I agree with Mitch. I think it'll be a very tough deal to do. However, I would argue I think there's an opportunity to be able to maybe seduce this guy over a loan period. I think that's how we would probably work it, get him in on loan and then look to structure a deal. You know, I think it would definitely generate the excitement among the fan base in terms of following up the Moani deal, the Simmons deal, you know, the Paulinho deal, you know, with a player like Valverde. And I think if he comes in, it'd be interesting to see where Tottenham see him playing. Do they see him as a centre midfield? Do they see him as a right back? Do they see him as a right midfielder? You know, one thing this guy has, which maybe we lack in this squad, is an unbelievable shot from distance. He hits it with pace, hits it with power, technically sound. You know, he's very energetic as well. He's got an engine, he'll get up and down all day. Could you imagine him in beside Paulinho? I mean, that would be an unbelievable, you know, base to have in front of Romero van de Ven.
Okay, let's move on to the next one. And this one is, I think we all know him very, very well. We've come up against him a few times. He's always good whenever we've seen him. John will throw back around to you. And that's Antoine Semenyo. Bournemouth understood to be readying themselves for heavy interest in the player, despite only recently signing a new contract with the club. He's been in formidable form already this season. 3 goals, 2 assists in his first 4 games of the new campaign. We know he was on Spurs' radar back in the summer. There was even suggestions to say that Spurs did make a move for him before opting to move to Kudus because they understood the price was going to be out of their range. Sources say Bournemouth are preparing to potentially lose the Ghanaian next summer and not before that. But one aspect that works in, of course, Andoni Iraola's favour is that he has just signed a new long-term contract with the club, so they can demand really any real price at this point and probably stick to it. John, your thoughts? I think, as I said to you before, what a fine player this guy is, and it would be, I think, a transformative signing if we do get Semenyo over the line. Him on one side, Kudus on the other. God, I would get excited, John.
Yeah, listen, he was out of our range in the summer, and 5 weeks later, he's within our range. Where's the money come from? But if it's there, listen, they've sold two of their centre backs, their left back, and one of their strikers. They're not going to sell any more until next summer. You're talking about 80 million plus. Do I want him? Hell yes. Who wouldn't want Semenyo? We know he offers us everything that we're missing. But, again, a bit like the Valverde, this is more realistic than Valverde. But again, they're not letting him go in the January transfer window, I can see, unless they pay some ridiculous sum of money.
John, thank you. Mitch, Davis, get your quick thoughts on Semenyo to Spurs. I think it's one that we'd all love to see happen, but will it happen? Mitch, for you tell us your thoughts on Semenyo, and that's a player we spoke to you about before, of course, during the summer transfer window.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you. When you put Semenyo and Semenyo next to each other, I think Semenyo is miles better, to be honest. To be totally honest with you, and that's not me being bitter because Semenyo is now signing a new contract at City. I just think Semenyo has so much quality and he has so much sort of variability to his game. The way he carries the ball, he's got a great strike on him. He's obviously quick. He can pick out a pass as well at times. I think he is the perfect sort of left wing option for us. It's the one, I think, glaring problem right now at Tottenham that is very, very evident for everyone to see. Thomas Frank very clearly doesn't know who he wants to play at left wing. It's probably an area that we're weakest in. And if we were to bring in someone like Semenyo, anyone would be delighted. I'd rather us go out personally and sign Semenyo than Valverde. If there was some miracle chance of us being able to bring one of the two in January, that would be the pick for me. But again, like Johnny said, I'd be shocked if Bournemouth were willing to let him go in the middle of the season.
Okay, interesting. Dave, I mean, some interesting comments coming through from our live chat here. King Hoddle says here, get him in, baby. He plays with Kudus for Ghana. And actually, I think we saw quite an interesting interview only a few weeks ago. Not that I would took delight in it. If anything, horrified by it, where he was being teased, wasn't he? Semenyo was teasing, obviously, Kudus because they beat us 1-0 at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. For you, Dave, would that really give us some real... I think that would give us some real quality. Went on the other side of the flank. You had Kudus on one side and, of course, Semenyo on the other. Both, of course, representatives of Ghana.
No, look, I really like Semenyo. What I like about him, sort of, I look around, I look at a lot of wingers now, they sort of play with fear, they're sort of passing on responsibility to other players. What I like about Semenyo, he gets the ball and he just goes, similar to Mo Kudus, nice and direct, and I think it's a rarity. He's sort of like an old school winger, if you'd like, and he has a lot of end product off the back of it. He would be an absolute game changer. Like you said, imagine him down one side, Kudus down the other side. You wouldn't be able to stop that, let alone, once Xabi Simons gets going in the number 10, and if we make Moani sort of permanent, he does end up playing up front, I think all of a sudden it's a front line where you've got a lot of quality right across the front of it. And let's be missing that front line is sort of the last piece that we're missing right now in terms of making that sort of 11 as strong as it can be. And you would argue then it's sort of all of a sudden becomes a front line that gets you a lot closer to challenging rather than maybe expecting it just to be a sort of transitional season. However, I agree with the boys, it's not going to happen in January. Bournemouth are smart. They knew that they'd be able to put a new defence together, but scoring goals at this level is the hardest thing to do. And they know by selling Semenyo, they would have put themselves in real trouble this year, especially if they didn't have the sort of options, scouted or lined up or the right replacement ready to come in for this guy. So I think it's one where they'll be prepared next summer if he keeps playing like this, that they'll be prepared to lose him next summer because they'll be in a better position then to maybe sort of handle that exit. I think the deal was 70 million. I think we were led to believe in the summer. Maybe
around that 70 million
Spurs
mark.
didn't really want to sort of stretch that far. Be interesting to see whether they will next summer. But for me, I think it's a no-brainer. He'd be an absolute game changer. Look at the problems we're having down that left-hand side right now. Thomas Frank said in his press conference today, one side's creating, the other side's finishing off moves. What's changed from last year? All we've done is move the creativity to the right-hand side from the left-hand side and the finishing from the left-hand side to the right-hand side. So we need more forward players in here to solve the problem. There's nothing Thomas Frank can do with the options he's got.
Yeah. Totally agree, Dave. I think, again, we are really missing, a player that can offer us maybe to some degree what Sonny did when he was at his best. I think it's fair to say I think we all were kind of at that point with Sonny where we all wished him well at the end, and maybe we felt with Sonny would have been hard to see him replicate the form that we've seen in previous seasons, especially when he was at his best. So, look, I think it's an area Spurs still need to fill, and I know for many out there, they're still really, really frustrated that we didn't bring in, a direct, genuine alternative to Sonny leaving the club and fill that position. Just one more player before we do look ahead to Leeds United. John, we'll just come back round to you. Forward this time, Spurs being linked with, I have to say, guy, Johnny, I think you know a little bit about him, and that's Matteo Pellegrino from Italian club Parma. He turns 24 later this month. He joined Parma from Valverde Sarsfield in January this year. Parma only paid 1.7 million to sign the player. Quite interestingly, most of his senior football has been played in Argentina. The 23-year-old scored 15 goals for Platans in 2024 and found the back of the net 3 times in 13 matches for Parma in Serie A during the previous campaign. He scored twice in 5 league matches this season and 3 times in the 2 Coppa Italia matches. God, the more in his stats, the more he's becoming impressive, Johnny. Should we go and get him?
Well, I had it all lined up what I was going to say, but you've taken most of it. You've taken most of it. Listen, his nickname's El Tank. I think that should tell you everything. He's a big unit. He's capable of leading the line and holding the ball up, which is something we've not done a lot of, and scoring goals. It's a bit of a strange one. As you say, he only cost 2 million euros. 6 million. I think there was a bid for 13 million for West Ham.
That's right. Yes,
they've got. He's actually Spanish, but he lived in Argentina. But I think West Ham had a bid of 13 million refused. I think that's more down to the fact that the home team in Argentina has got 50% of the sell-on. But I'm just wondering, is that really, unless Don Fabio has seen something in this kid, and that's entirely possible, that we've not seen. He's 24 this month, so he hasn't set the world alight, but maybe he's got the assets that Thomas Frank is looking for, and that's why he's of interest. So I'd say he's more likely, but less exciting.
Okay. Gut feeling just very quick on this, boy, before we do go for this final break. Will we get a striker in January? Do you think that will be one of the prime targets, John, for you, yes or no? Striker in general, do you think we're already overfilled in that department? Charlton, Salaki, Muani.
Left wing for me is numero uno. Left wing.
Okay, left wing. Do we agree on that? Let's go. Mitch, what's the position for you, January, Mitch? You want to see strengthened the most? If you had a ranking tier, what would be top of that list for you?
Yeah, left wing, for sure. I think it's pretty obvious that the quality is lacking at the moment there. Not to say that someone like Odobert or Tell may not come into their own eventually.
Also, Mitch, the fitness is lacking. We just got, I've never known this dead leg with Muani. I mean, what has happened with this dead leg?
I know, but that's the thing as well, isn't it? Like when you look at the strikers, obviously, Richarlison's been the striker for the entire season so far, which is crazy to think about considering obviously Solanke.
And he's going to be the one that's missed me the least amount of fitness.
Yeah, exactly that. And I'm surprised that he's not tweaked something at this point with the amount of minutes he's having to play. We're going to end up, running him into the ground again. But we technically have 3 or 4 strikers on the books in Richarlison, in Solanke, Kolo Muani. Obviously, Tell can play as a striker as well. But it seems we only really have one option at the moment. So it would be difficult for me to sit here and say, I think we need to go out and sign a striker in January, to be honest, because without shipping someone out, if we were to sell someone, and if that was a plan, then yes, absolutely, we'd need to bring in a replacement. But left wing's got to be the priority for me. And yeah, I can't really look past that at the moment, to be honest with you, Ricky. I just feel like we need to put everything or most of what we're searching for and planning out into picking and going after the right left wing position, because that, I think, would make a real difference.
Agree. David, let's come to you quickly on that for you. Positional wise, what's the most important thing going into January at the moment? Although, bearing in mind, we're only in October.
Yeah, look, for me, I'm actually going to put striker as the most important position. I think when you look at left wing and striker, realistically, you've got 4 or 5 players, that can sort of cover each position, but not a lot of great quality there. However, I think, for the rest of the season, once we get Muani fit, I think Simmons can also play off the left. I know a lot of fans don't like him down that side, but, I think he can play there. And I think you've got, enough quality options with them to be able to get you through the season in terms of making up that on the left wing, although it is a position that does need to be addressed urgently. But I would argue, I think striker is much more important. You look at Richarlison, look, he just hasn't offered what we need. I think he had 10 touches the other night, 2 of which I think were from kickoff. The goals are drying up. He's not offering a lot of overall in terms of overall play. No one seems to be able to link up with him, and I just think when you look at Dom Solanke, he's had a long history of injuries, so for me, I think what we really need is someone up front that can go and sort of grab us consistent goals between now and the end season. I think that's a massive difference. That's one thing that Harry Kane done. The amount of equalisers and winners that guy scored for Tottenham Hotspur. And I think we're really lacking that, I think, like I said, I think we have enough options out wide to be able to make it work and create. But what we don't have is that person in the box that's just clinical that we can rely on. And, the fact that we're already sort of getting hyped up with a Harry Kane return and we're asking him to come back and fill the void that he left, shows that we really need that sort of striker.
Agree. Look, guys, we are going to go for our final break of the show. We're going to do with you a quick 5 on Leeds. For our listeners and audio, you're going to hear from that Leeds podcast who gives you an update. Well, they give you an update on Leeds and what is going on over there. For us, we're going to be building up to Leeds over here right now. Let's bring you in the main news from Thomas Frank's presser. That has come from, of course, that press conference he held on the Friday. Thomas Frank says that Christian Romero is fit and will start after sitting out the midweek trip to Bordeaux. So that is confirmed. Romero will start for Tottenham in centre of defence. Dominic Solanke, as we are aware, has had a minor procedure, and Frank expects to know more about his future availability when they return from the international break. So keep an eye on that as we probably chuckle in the background to that one. Rano Kolomawani, once again, not available for Leeds United, but has been back on the pitch over the past 2 days, but is still nursing the deadest of dead legs. So make of that what you will. Frank has also said that Kota Takai is getting better and better. And I'm aware for listeners and audio that he's looking younger and younger every time we show this picture. He's trained with the team for the last 10 days, so that's promising. And Frank is pleased that the team have come back from losing positions 3 times in a row and has said that resilience is the key and the mentality this team is building. Now, in relation to Leeds United and what there is to come, some interesting stats with Leeds out there. Leeds, they have not lost at home in the league for more than a year. Now, look, we are aware, of course, Leeds United did spend last season in the Championship, but of course, Spurs currently have the best away record for, every season they've gone to Leeds. So you do wonder where the game will be won and lost. Frank said Leeds, they are a very decent outfit. He's got a lot of respect for Daniel Farke, whom he holds a close relationship with. He's always one of those that he admires, and also says the stadium is always a difficult place to play in. John, let's start with you in terms of Leeds and what they'll bring. Like I said, we're aware from that perspective, they haven't lost once at home, for more than a year. So it just shows you how difficult it will be at Ellen Road. You're going to be there. How do you see this playing out for you, John?
Well, our last 2 games, we've scored 4 goals in each of the games. And so I would think that, it's going to be a tough ask. Anyone who's been to Ellen Road, it's a feisty, fiery atmosphere. So I expect it to be cut and thrust. For me, what's going to be really interesting is the battle of the midfield. You've got Paulinho, who's got the joint most tackles in the league with Sean Longstaff. And then you've got a particular favourite of mine, Anton Stack, in the middle for Leeds. He came from Hoffenheim. He's a monster. He's about 6'4", or maybe a bit more. That battle there is crucial tomorrow. He's been sort of mouthing off in the week coming up to the game, saying that he thinks that he's going to do Spurs, and it's a tough ask. I mean, I think he's got the third most tackles. So when you put Longstaff and Stack together against Paulinho, something's going to give. So I need to see someone combative in the middle of the park tomorrow. I don't know. It's a tough one. Ricky. Listen, we should have enough to beat them, but it's the final third again. We just aren't good enough in the final third. And they've also got Noah Afakor, who's top. And the one player who most Spurs fans prayed that we didn't sign, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, is up there for him. And he's had plenty of chances, but just can't seem to put them away. And of course, they've got Joe Rodon, who's got a score to settle. He's got a score to settle, Ricky. Listen, it's going to be a tough game. Tough with the crowd.
Yeah.
Tough. I think Leeds have made some excellent purchases. They've really invested hard. Yeah. And I think this is the best Leeds team or squad that's been in the Premier League for a number of years. I would be happy to come away with a draw tomorrow. Obviously, I want the win. Okay. I want the win, obviously. But it ain't going to be easy. As you said, unbeaten this season at home and unbeaten for the last year.
Yeah, well, listen, they've had a respectable so far, 8 points in total, and they do sit 12th in the Premier League table, 4 points above the relegation zone. So far this season, only 3 teams are netting more set-piece goals than Leeds United being 4, and the Whites have only shipped six set-piece goals themselves, only West Ham conceding more. So I think it's an area Tottenham can look at. We'll go to Dave next on this, Dave. 12:30 kickoff. Does that maybe suit us, Dave, at Ellen Road? Maybe it not being a feisty 4:30 or an 8 p.m. kickoff. Does that work in our favour? Or am I just clutching at straws here, Dave?
No, I think you're clutching at straws here, unfortunately, Rick. Look, for me, it's just maybe my recent memory or my memory in general. And I think if someone probably goes and does the stats, which I'm sure someone will put in the comments once this show is done, I think we've got a bad enough record in terms of lunchtime kickoffs, 12:30.
We did beat Man City at 12:30 this season. I had to remind Jason of that. We did beat Man City 12:30.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. But I think in general,
but again, now we always beat Man City, so does that even count anymore?
Well, that's the thing, we always drop points to Wolves, and that happened at the weekend, this last weekend as well, didn't it? I think
true. It's
one of them. I'm not a big fan of the 12:30 kickoffs. I think players I think the first half, especially first half an hour in them games, is sort of a dull affair. I think it actually might work in Thomas Frank's favour. He does sort of favour looking to maybe, go and break teams down and that in the second half, keep it compact for the first 15, 20 minutes. But I think so far out of the 3 away games this season, we've accumulated as many points as done in our previous 11, I think.
Yes, we have. That's right.
Last season. So, our way form is improving, and that's because he's brought about a much better defensive structure. To me, I think the key tomorrow is getting back to keeping clean sheets. Our last 3 out of our last 4 games, we haven't kept clean sheets. And, it's sort of alluding to that's why we're dropping points. When we were winning games, we had the ability of keeping clean sheets. So I think if we get back to keeping a clean sheet, we win this game. If that defense isn't as tight, or we produce another sloppy error, because some of the goals we have conceded has been quite sloppy, then I think, you're in for a difficult afternoon. So as long as there's no sloppy errors to keep a clean sheet, we're winning this game, Ricky.
Okay, Dave, interesting point on that. We're going to fly around if we can to Mitch, if we put Mitch on this point. Now, I mean, look, Mitch, I'll just read some stats out there, which I don't think is going to fill people with confidence or will fill them with confidence. Tottenham have obviously won both of their last 2 league visits to Ellen Road and could beat Leeds away from home for the 3 times running in the league for the very, very first time. Leeds have lost 9 of their last 11 Premier League games to Tottenham, and that includes 1 win and a draw in there, including each of their last 4 in a row, their longest ever losing run to Spurs. Leeds have shipped 4 goals in the last 2 Premier League games against Spurs, losing 4-0 in Marcelo Bielsa's last game in charge and 4-1 their final game of the 22-23 season before being relegated. No side has ever scored 4 goals in 3 away league matches at Ellen Road in a row. Mitch, we spoke about it at the start of the show. We're going to speak about it at the end here to close it on. we've got to end this curse around international breaks. Right, we've got to. I mean, look, I think maybe under different circumstances, Johnny's right. A point wouldn't be too bad there, but I just feel, I don't know if you agree, Mitch. I think going into this October international break, it just feels the last few performances. It feels there's a few people concerned out there, and I think it's really important as fans to go in with a win, and everyone's in really good high spirits for, like you said, Mitch, a really challenging October and November to come.
Yeah, sounds like we're expecting goals tomorrow, so I'm looking forward to the 0-0 draw. But yeah, it's a really, really difficult one because I think on paper it's a really tough test, as the others have already alluded to. Leeds have got a very good squad this season. Ellen Road, regardless of the team that they've got, regardless as to who's in charge of them, you have to play well to beat Leeds on their own turf. And I mean, history suggests that we do it more often than not, which I feel like it's just all weirdly set up. You know, the Saturday early kickoff, the curse around Spurs before the international break. I genuinely have no idea what to expect. So I'm kind of going into this one open-minded. I'm feeling hopeful about it, but like Dave said, I think we need to shore up that defense a little bit more from what we've seen in the last couple of weeks. So I think that will probably be Thomas Frank's number one priority, going away from home and keeping a clean sheet. I think he'll be very, very happy with. But yeah, and then as Johnny said, the final third is the biggest struggle I think that we've had in recent weeks. I really, really, and I know it's a hostile atmosphere. I know it's a tough place to go. I really want to see Xavi Simons start in that number 10 role tomorrow. I want to give him the keys and see what he can do for a full 90 minutes in that creative midfield space to see if he can be the difference maker that we've really, really needed over the last few months, and at least this season with James Maddison being out. So you know, like, there's a lot that we could nitpick from that attacking front that has been a bit of a problem in the last couple of weeks. You know, Richarlison not really doing much, but you could argue that he's not been really getting the service. Not knowing who our strongest left winger is. Was it Johnson? Is it Tell? Is it Odebert? And then Kudus maybe trying to add a few goals to his game. Although I'm not going to heap any criticism on him because I think he's been fantastic since coming to Tottenham. So there's a lot that we could improve on in that final third that I'm hoping to see in the game. And if we click, we're a good team on paper. And I say it a lot, and I'm about to say I hate saying it, but on paper we've got such a good bunch of guys and a lot of talent that are capable of causing problems. Yeah. So yeah, I'm hopeful, but I genuinely think the scales could tip one way or the other in terms of there could be a ton of goals, there could be no goals, we could win, we could lose, we could draw. I'm very reluctant to put a prediction on it, Ricky.
Yep. I know Andy Costa going to script me when I read this out, so sorry, Anne, in advance. Leeds haven't won any of their last 11 Premier League matches that are kicked off before 3 p.m. since a 3-0 win over Chelsea in August 2022. So if that can't give us confidence, what can? John, we'll start with you. You're there for us today for listeners on audio. Prediction, what are we going for?
Also, Spurs will be the first team ever if we score 4 goals to score 4 goals three times on the trot. We beat them 4-0, 4-1. Well, I mean, I'd love to say let's go 4-2. I mean, but I'm going to go for a Desmond. Okay. More with my head than my heart. Okay. My heart says we're going to smash them, but the reality of Ellen Road and that fierce atmosphere, even at 12 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw.
Love that, John. Okay, I say I love that. I don't love that. I'd rather, of course, us win the game.
Of course, we want to win.
Just very quickly, John, because we are going to wrap up. What will the mood be like if we end up with a draw there and you review what August, September, October has brought us? Are you still in a good place under Frank if it was to end in a draw?
I'm going to say this. I haven't mentioned a certain person's name since we've been on the show, but okay. I would rather be 10 games with 1 defeat than over at Marinakis land, right, with 6 defeats in 6 games. Okay, and that's all I'll say on the matter. He's already the worst start as a Nottingham Forest manager in 100 years. He's there to break records, and I'm hoping Frank is at our club to break our records. I'm happy. Could it be better? Hell yes. Does it need to be better? Hell yes. But we're not losing. We're grinding out somehow or other, playing badly, grinding results out until it improves. We don't have the right tools. So let's hope. No, I'm keeping the faith.
Absolutely. John, thank you so much. Make sure you go and check him out. Of course, Football Link's very own, Spurs 5's very own, over on the Insta, Johnny H3232. And of course, Talking Tottenham 1882. Mitch, let's fly around to you. Of course, you can catch Mitch on YouTube, giving you previews, reactions, and more updates, of course. Mitch, let's get your take on it for you. How do you think it's working out? Give us a prediction.
I went with 2-2 in my prediction in my video that I put out earlier. So I am going to stick with that and continue that theme as well. I sense chaos. I smell chaos in this game right before the international break.
No, mate, it's not before the international break. Come on.
Spurs going to get the heart racing just before they bin us off for a week or two while everyone goes on international duty. So, yeah, look, I think it's going to be a good game. I think there's going to be goals. And I just want to see... I want to see the fight, and I want to see that extra bit of quality that we've been missing over the last few weeks. I want to see players being a bit more creative, taking a few more risks, and just showing what they really can do. Because I feel like it's been a bit reserved over the last couple of games, and I feel like there's a good opportunity against Leeds to really go there, cause an upset, and pick up a win. So, but I'll stick with the 2-2 draw. But there's opportunity, in my opinion.
Okay. I mean, that would at least for you to break the curse of the international break. We'd be obviously no longer suffering defeat. Dave, let's close with you. A lot of love you've got to say, Dave, for your return and also for Mitch's return here. Andrew Burnett showing you some love. Andrew, thank you so much. Very kind little donation there. Dave, close us off on this point. What are we expecting up at Ellen Road?
It's a weird one because I remember my last couple of trips there, or, Tottenham's last couple of trips there. We've sort of won big, haven't we? Beat them closing day of the season under Conte down there and stuff like that. But 12:30 kickoff, to be honest with you, I don't think it's going to be too much of an exciting game. I think it will be decided by a goal here or there. And I think that'll go Tottenham. I'm going to go 1-0 Tottenham. Back us to keep a clean sheet and our goal to come from a set piece. So I think a tight 1-0, and I'll take it heading into the international break. Curse is done and dusted, which then will allude to mentality shifting under Thomas Frank and heading into an October period with a good mood around the club. And at the end of the day, that's all we want as Tottenham fans. We want that good feel factor around the club. No one wants to sit here, highlighting problems and giving out and getting upset about problems. We want positivity. So it's over to Frank and the guys tomorrow. But I'd argue Frank has to stop with this rotation nonsense. It's not even 10 games into the season. Consistency is key right now. Go and put out your strongest 11. Let's get 3 points on the board and head into this busy fixture schedule. We have to stack up the points tomorrow.
Bless you. Dave, you're a star. Thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you more, of course, during this crazy period, as Mitch and Johnny too. Look, strap in, right? Strap in. It's going to be a busy, crazy period for Spurs after the international break. But before that, it's just a small matter of Leeds at Ellen Road, unbeaten over a year, and Spurs looking to end this international break curse. From the wonderful Jonathan Hamme, from the superb Mitch Fretton, from the brilliant Dave Norwich Hotspur, we have been the last one on Spurs. Please keep safe, keep well, and as always, come on you Spurs.